All right, FFLC Nation, here we go. 5 seconds and counting.
Boom.
There
Hey,
it is.
JB and JC here. Welcome again to our September Ask Us Anything. Glad you can make it. I've still got people dialing in, but we're going to get started so we can stay on time for all of you. And we'll have this for first-time joiners. If you've never seen us before, we'll have our information slide up at the end as well. JC and JB here, FFL Consultants and Compliance Specialists for the National Shooting Sports Foundation. Need more information about that? Stay tuned to the end and or give us a call.
All right, this month's Ask Us Anything event is brought to you by QTalk Rock. QTalk has more than 20 attorneys focused on the business and legal needs of firearm ammunition, accessory manufacturers, dealers, and ranges. So QTalk Rock happens to be our chief counsel. We utilize them and support them in a number of endeavors as it relates to the firearms industry. So when you need an attorney, reach out to us. We obviously support all the law firms, but QTalk Rock is our chief counsel. So we've got a lot of great folks over there that are industry enthusiasts and passionate about the work they do on behalf of their clients and equally passionate about the firearms industry.
All right. And some of you, if you've never joined us before, we do have a Q&A at the end, probably about 45 minutes into this. And please start putting your questions into our chat box at the bottom of your screen. Just hit that chat button and type in your question. We will take those in the order received. So stay tuned. And here's our agenda for today. We will be going over some numbers. I always like to give you guys the up close and personal insights to the ATF activities. Our updates today will include some breaking news, all of the items you need to know for any of the recent rulings. What are the to-dos, the must-dos, and the deadlines? We'll talk about inspections. Oh my God, we met the ATF this week. That's a crazy story. That we'll have that at about the half-hour mark. Lessons learned, what you need to know, what our FFLs are learning through their inspections, and what we're seeing while we're out there visiting FFLs like you. Get you the great strategies that we have for people passing inspections with flying colors. We have some exciting, really exciting activity over the last 2 to 3, 4 weeks. And we do believe it's because of your preparation as FFLs using the guide we have available for you. And we'll spend more time on GIRFT. Get it right the first time. And here we go.
All right, we brought it to you last month. UPS has updated its policy for shipping firearms. So just be aware of that. If you haven't gotten your letter, you will. We're starting to see some of it pop up on social media and people asking questions. They've made some pretty significant changes to their policy. It's very interesting that FedEx is doing some layoffs. I think they may want to rethink their approach to firearms transfers. I wouldn't be surprised if UPS may not be forced to go back and rethink their approach to doing firearm shipments and such. So stay tuned for that. Remains to be seen, but just be aware there are rule changes, policy rule changes with UPS on the shipment of firearms. So keep that in the back of your mind and moving on. All right. Most of you have heard about this whole merchant category code being created for the firearms industry. Just keep in mind, it's just a simple 4-digit code. It identifies you as a firearms retailer or somebody in the gun business. And it really doesn't do anything relative to the transaction itself. It's just overall that you had a transaction at a firearms store. So it doesn't share any information, doesn't tell them who bought a gun or anything like that. It enables banks to decide whether they should assign the new category code to gun merchants. That's up to your credit card merchant service provider. So if they're a gun-friendly provider, chances are they may not adopt it. We're hearing already that Visa is taking a second look at this as whether or not they want to go down this path or not. So just keep that in mind. By all means, ask your merchant service provider if they're going to be doing anything with that, all right? All right, ATF Ruling 2021R-08. We have an update for you on this puppy. So very, very interesting. It looks like the ATF, through its supporting statement and justifications for the fiscal year 2023 budget request, has added or submitted a supporting statement and justification for an amnesty registration of pistol brace weapons. And it calls out photos of the weapon being registered will be required to prove the weapon does utilize a pistol brace in its configuration and would qualify for an amnesty registration. A big thanks to Ammo Land for providing this update and this information to us. I got to tell you, what does it mean? We have no idea. I mean, this was just something they put into their fiscal budget request. So definitions, guidance, and all that remains to be seen. They just provided a very high level overview to Congress in a request for additional budget dollars. So stay tuned. We'll keep you updated as we learn more. We're reading through the same documents that Ammo Land produced out there. So, and attempting to get whatever's been submitted to Congress as far as further details. So we'll bring you updates as we get them.
All right. All right, let's take a look at the numbers real fast for August. Remember, these are a month behind, and these are really in relation to completed activities documented and closed out by the ATF, not anything ongoing, not anything in session or in litigation. So total inspections for August were 767, the highest number we've seen in any month, almost 100 over the prior month. And you'll see in a minute the year-to-date numbers, but here's the same big cities. If you're in these areas, I mean, they love Texas, obviously. You guys are the biggest state with the most FFLs, so that makes sense. But some of these other areas do not. Phoenix, for some reason, is a hot target for them. And if you got questions about inspections in your area, please give us a call. If you missed any of our prior videos on who's susceptible or next on the list, maybe just take a look back at July or August videos on YouTube, FFL Consultants, and you'll find out more about that. We do think the budget plays a lot into this time of year. The ATF's fiscal budget ends at the end of September. So they're probably spending a lot of money fast to get the folks on the road. So we are seeing a high frequency of visits in September already. A lot of visits. We have some good and bad news, so stay tuned for more on that. Warning conferences, there's only 15 issued, which is good for us. That means you, as the FFLs, are doing the right thing to get through your inspections with flying colors. Hopefully you're using our guide. We've got a lot of praise and applause on that, putting that out there for you guys to have your pre-inspection review guide ready and exercise everything we have listed in there. And then on revocations, keep in mind, revocations are closed and completed litigation situations where the revocation has been issued. The process has been completed. That 6 to 12 month process of delays, appeals, arguments, hearings, etc. That's all been concluded where folks have actually surrendered their license. That's what's listed here. And or have it revoked. I mean, surrender is an option to revocation. But the revocations closed are only 12 for September. And here's the year-to-date numbers. Inspections, total year-to-date. So this is again, the fiscal year. I'm sorry, this is our calendar year. So we expect these numbers for the calendar year for 2022 to hit that 10 to 12,000 mark. We've already exceeded what they did last year or in any prior year. So the inspections are just rampant. 127 warning conferences year to date. Again, those are concluded conferences, not anything pending. And the revocations here, it's up to 79. That's a 100% increase over last year and rising. Again, these are closed, and these do not include where a revocation was litigated, where in the end, the FFL said, okay, I'll surrender my license. Okay, so these revocations are shutdowns. This is where the ATF says, you know, have no choice. We're taking your license, dispose of your business, and liquidate your business. There's alternatives to that, such as surrender, and such as surrenders, and where the FFL has other options where it's not documented as a revocation. So, all right. So let's go to 710 revocations. We published this number last month. We have not gotten any inside notification from any ATF insiders about an increase in revocation notices issued, but we are hearing on a regular basis, 2, 3, 4, 5 a week. Folks who just find us on Google or word of mouth and referrals by all of you. regarding revocation notices they have received. And we will say that the revocations being received now are a result of inspections, more so of any old warnings that were rescinded in 2021. That was a big push for the ATF earlier this year. We think that's process is concluded, but more revocations are being called into us weekly, and we don't know what this number is, but let's just say greater than 700. All right, we got a rulings review, JC.
Yeah, we're just going to touch on these because we've been beating these to death over the last few months. As everybody hopefully knows and should know, ATF Ruling 2021R-05F went into effect August 24th. And just a few highlights, it redefined the frame or receiver and talks to privately made firearms. So just to touch on this, keep in mind, if you have any of those billets, blanks, 80%ers, whatever the case may be, still in inventory, still being sold. If you're selling them with any of the tooling, jigs, drills, instructions, whatever, drill bits, those items have to be marked. What we've been advising our FFLs that we support is one thing: get rid of the jigs, get rid of the drill bits, get rid of the instructions. You want to continue to sell them as just that piece of plastic or that piece of metal, and ensure it meets that definition of a frame or receiver as it's been updated. As far as privately made firearms are concerned, we're just going to offer you a little advice. What part of privately made didn't you understand? We're getting a lot of questions about PMFs, and I got to tell you, the risk and liability associated with doing any type of gunsmithing or adjustments or anything like that, or even taking them in on trade or as a pawn, whatever the case may be, there's an inherent risk to that and liability because, well, how do you know what type of craftsmanship or quality of workmanship they did to that firearm? So be really careful with these, okay? Identification of firearms, that's changed a little bit. Marking requirements, you're probably not going to see a lot of it today, but over the next few years, you're going to start seeing changes as it relates to marking requirements and manufacturers, importers actually, following what the new rules are. What you'll see is you'll start to see all those identification marks being placed on the frame or receiver rather than all over the firearm. Obviously, it allowed a little bit of grandfathering in as far as, if a manufacturer or importer, it's been marking it that way forever and is recognizable, et cetera, they're going to allow them to continue with that. But for the most part, new firearms coming on the market are going to have the proper markings in the right place. So be on the lookout for that. Obviously, we'll get into multiple manufacturers, multiple importers and such, and multiple serial numbers here in a little bit. Record keeping and retention requirements. Keep in mind with this ruling, got to keep them forever. No longer can you dispose of ATF Form 4473s or anything with an NTN number after the 20-year mark and denied in a dealer canceled transactions with an NTN number. That 5-year rule goes out the window. You now have to keep those forever as well. Are you a gunsmith or manufacturer? We're getting a lot of questions about Cerakoting and assembling firearms before they're entered into commerce or being sold or resold. Keep that in mind, resold. So if you take a gun in on transfer and do something to it to make it more palatable to your buyers, like Cerakoting it, even if you take a used firearm in and plan to resell it, and you Cerakote it or do something to it, assemble it, put a different barrel on it or something like that, you keep in mind that you may be crossing into manufacturing world. So be really, really careful about that. We've got a couple articles out on our website about asking if you're a gunsmith or manufacturer, talks about the gray areas. Go out and check that out. But just be careful and always feel free to pick up the phone and call us before you do something, get yourself in trouble. ATF Ruling 2022-1 just kind of reiterated electronic storage and changed a couple things from 05F. And that is basically now you can scan any ATF Form 4473s 3 years plus 1 day old that you have in a box somewhere. Just make sure you're scanning them in an unalterable PDF format and you capture all 6 pages. So that changed a little bit. We touched on 2121R-08, the arm brace ruling. Just stay tuned for more information on that. And then we're going to go over the NICS Denial Notification Act here in a second. So the big question is that you have to ask yourself day in and day out is, are you in compliance? Make sure you're following these rulings And if you don't know something, reach out to us, ask us, we're happy to help. Just real quick, touch base on this. This is, if you are a dealer, this is the update to your A&D records that you are required to do. Now, if you're a paper bound book and you don't want to go out and buy a new book yet, just go ahead and add that "or privately made firearm" in quotes, along with the PMF in parentheses. That's totally fine. You can certainly handwrite that in, just write it in neatly. Remember, you're either paper or electronic. You can't be both. Okay. So if you transitioned over to electronic, but you're keeping, say, a paper bound book for gunsmithing or warranty work or whatever the case may be, you need to go full electronic. All right. And if you are electronic, make sure your provider has updated the table headings as far as the privately made firearm. There are a couple out there lingering. I don't know why, but just make sure that gets done ASAP. That's a requirement. If the solution provider you're using doesn't have an answer for you, then you might want to start thinking about moving to another solution provider. Remember, it's your responsibility as the FFL to make sure your records are in compliance with regulations. What the solution provider does is neither here nor there, right? And then obviously, if you move to a new bound book, say you've got either changed electronic solution providers or you have a paper bound book and you receive one of the new paper bound books with the new headings and you're going to move all of your open dispositions over, just make sure on your old A&D record, now keep in mind, you still have to keep those, but in your old A&D record, you need to notate that you move to book with new headings required per the ATF ruling, and then put where it moved to. So if it's on page 10, line 6, put move to new book, page 6, line 10. That's that simple. With the electronic solution providers, obviously, if you're moving from one to another, they'll provide you some sort of log number or some sort of line serial number or whatever. Just go ahead and use that as your documentation as well. For those importers and manufacturers that joined us today, these are the headings that are required by you. I can tell you, those of you that are still paper, might be a little bit hard to add that additional column for country or countries of manufacturer. Keep in mind that is only if that firearm is imported. You do not need to put USA for every one of them. All right. But again, you have to add that privately made firearm PMF if privately made in the US. Right. So you're either paper or electronic. Again, you got to go both. Okay. So you have to incorporate everything into one or the other. So you're required to consolidate your bound books. Now, that's not to say that you can't have an NFA book and a GCA book. That's fine. You just have to make sure all your acquisitions and dispositions associated with the firearm are all incorporated and consolidated in one bound book. Again, if you're using paper, make sure you add those texts and columns. If you're using electronic, make sure that your solution provider has done this for you. If not, you better start thinking about moving to somebody else because you're in violation. And again, if you're moving over to a new solution, make sure you're disposing of the firearms correctly, just like a dealer has to.
Yep. And hey, guys, just a reminder, keep those questions coming. We are going to be limited at the end for our Q&A this month, but we will answer your questions in the order received.
All right, unusual firearm acquisitions. You may not get this too much today, but I anticipate over the next few years, you're going to start seeing it more and more. And that's that multiple manufacturers, multiple importers, or multiple serial numbers marked. You just need to make sure that you're recording all information related to that firearm. You are the custodian of records. You need to make sure you're capturing everything identifiable about that firearm to support law enforcement in the future if and when a trace occurs. So it's real simple. It's just, if there's two manufacturers marked, write down the first one / the second one. It doesn't matter what order you put them in because you don't know which one was the manufacturer first. So same holds true with importers and serial numbers. Just whatever the information is / the other information. Okay. If manufacturer isn't identifiable, and we see this especially in a lot of the Turkish made firearms and shotguns and such, if the manufacturer isn't identifiable, use the country of origin. If they put Turkey down, just put Turkey. That's the information you have available. Okay. We've gotten a lot of questions about going forward, or do I need to go back and fix all of my old entries? Anything pre-August 24th does not need to be fixed. It's anything August 24th and going forward. So the grandfathered in is everything August 23rd back. All right. And always remember, whatever's in your A&D record also needs to be on the 4473 when you're transferring that firearm. All right. So if there's multiple manufacturers, multiple importers, or multiple serial numbers, you need to record that on the ATF form 4473 as well. All right. I said it earlier. We're going to talk about the NICS Denial Notification Act. So this goes into effect September 26th. We're not anticipating anything until October 1st. So it's going to be a little bit of a delay. This is only going to apply to NICS users, but there's a but, and there is that but. All right. If you are a point of contact state, in other words, you contact the state for your background checks, doesn't matter if you contact them for both handgun and log gun, or you just contact them for one or the other. Keep in mind that if the point of contact state does not participate in this, NICS may very well step in and actually take over the process. They won't take over the process of the background check. They'll take over the process of notifying local law enforcement about the fact that you got a denial and who that was. All right. This has nothing to do with you. There's nothing you need to do other than respond to local law enforcement or NICS when they contact you in regards to that firearm transfer or that attempted firearm transfer and denial. Okay. So just keep that in mind. You'll be contacted by either local LE or NICS to obtain information about that transaction. Remember, educate your customers about the appeal process. I don't know how many of you, I talked about it last month, only about 16% of denied transactions actually go through the appeal process. That's remarkable. You've got to educate your customers about going through the appeal. Now, obviously, you hand them the card and say, here's all the information you need to appeal. And they say, I don't want it. That means that individual knows why they were denied. So just keep that in mind. Educate them on the appeal process, push them through it. We have a number of FFLs that actually sit down with the individual and help them submit their appeals. So, make sure that people are doing this, right? Make sure that complete your denials, and you have to keep them forever. That means 34 and 35 on your denials has to be completed. Do not date that form, and you are now required to keep that forever, okay? Firearm serial number checks to be determined. As part of this NICS Denial Notification Act and actually the Consolidated Appropriations Act, there was a clause in there to allow firearm retailers to do serial number checks to determine whether or not the gun was stolen. We don't know where this is going to go or how they're going to handle this. It's going to be a very awkward kind of situation. So we're stand by, stay tuned. We'll figure out what's going to happen with this and give you more feedback. Another part of this act is the employee background checks. FFLs are going to be allowed to conduct background checks of their employees to ensure they're not prohibited. Remember, if your employees are prohibited by law and can't be in possession of a firearm, they can't even handle firearms in your store. So make sure that you've implemented some sort of strategy with your employee base that they notify you if and when they become prohibited. That's a big no-no.
Yeah, and as we've said in past, we have had folks working with an employee who was a felon in the store, and didn't turn out good for the FFL, turned into a revocation. So have that policy in place.
Yep. So this is new this month, winning together. All right. We're an FFL community, and I can appreciate the fact that you have competition down the street or competition in the same city, but let's face facts. We're all in this together. And what we want you to do is, if you're getting any type of strange or unusual recommendations from the ATF, you've been contacted by the ATF and something just doesn't seem right to you, or maybe it's something new coming down the pipe that you were made aware of, please share that information with us so we can get it out to the community at large and let everyone know, as well as maybe we have to establish a best practice for the industry. And let everyone know, hey, this is something coming down the pipe that you need to be aware of and prepared for, just in case. We may even get feedback from other FFLs when we share something that same thing happened to them. So we can kind of gauge and support our FFL community and getting the information out and supporting them with strategies. All right, lessons learned month in review. This is JB and JC's take on September. We did a number of mock inspections around the country, and we've got a lot of updates for you, a lot of strange scenarios that we had to work through and figure out. So Number one, remember 27A through E is for NICS or the point of contact responses only, not for yours. Now, the most common thing that we saw was FFLs utilizing the canceled box in either 27C or D. Canceled is not relative to you in any way. That is not you canceling a transaction. That is actually the NICS or point of contact state canceling that transaction. Now, what does canceled mean as far as that goes? It means something was wrong with the background check. You may have transposed a first name and a last name, or given the wrong date of birth, or some situation like that where something just doesn't add up. Or you actually contacted NICS or the point of contact state and actually told them, hey, I need to cancel that transaction because of this. Okay. Those are the only situations. This is not you canceling the transaction because the customer forgot their wallet or changed their mind or whatever. All right. So keep that in mind. Don't use those boxes for yourself. Those are for actual communications from NICS or the point of contact state. Remember, 27D and E must be updated when notified. So no matter what the case, if the firearm didn't get transferred or the firearm did, you do need to go back and update the 4473. If NICS or the point of contact state came back to you and advised you of a change in the status of that background check, you need to update it accordingly, okay? Duplicate NICS point of contact state, same transaction. We actually had this a couple of weeks ago when we were doing a full-blown mock inspection for an FFL. They had 6 or 7 duplicate NICS transactions. And what that means is they conducted 2 NICS transactions for the same firearm transfer. And they didn't account for both NICS transactions. Now, you're perfectly fine. Things happen. Systems get screwed up, electronic systems, things like that. That's fine. What we want you to do in those scenarios, keep track of both of those NICS transactions that were issued for that transfer and place both NICS transaction numbers or point of contact state control numbers in box 27B. It's okay. You can put both there and just make a little note. Make a little note in box 32. Inadvertently ran 2 NICS checks for the same transaction or transfer. That's perfectly fine. Nobody's going to ding you on it unless you don't keep track of it and make a notation, okay? Incorrect buyer info and NICS and point of contact states. You need to make sure that you're being really, really careful when you're doing those electronic background checks and submitting information. What we found last week while being on site was somebody inadvertently entered the wrong acronym or initials for a state. And luckily we were able to contact NICS leadership and get it sorted out to make sure everything was okay, to make sure they didn't inadvertently transfer a firearm to somebody they shouldn't. So you all and your employees need to be really careful when entering information about the buyer when doing a background check. Another one that came up the last couple of weeks, out-of-state resident transfers. And in this particular case, we had one go to someone in Illinois. It was an out-of-state transfer to a resident of Illinois, and another one to Florida. You have to know the laws in both states, folks. You got to do it. If you don't know, you're unsure, don't do that transfer. We find a lot of folks coming from these very anti-gun states attempting to buy firearms in other states because they think they're either A, they're going to get away with it, or B, they're going to, they don't know the laws themselves. So just keep in mind, don't do it if you don't know, okay? Don't fall into the trap of reciprocity. We've actually heard this one a number of times in the last few weeks. Well, our state has reciprocity with Texas. Well, that's all well and good for a concealed carry situation, but it does not apply when it comes to firearm transfers. Our inspection last week or the week before, we reviewed about 7,000 plus 4473s for this FFL. Spent a whole week on site. Let me tell you something. It was a mundane process. You all need to make sure, number one, that you're stapling the forms in a way that they're easily reviewable. This particular FFL was stapling in either corner, and it was just a mess. And then on top of it, they had a litany of unnecessary attachments attached to that firearm transfer, all of which can be used to cross-reference against the 4473, and you will be held accountable if something doesn't match up. You're going to have to prove something, and if you don't have that proof, you're done. chances are it'll be very close to a revocation, if not some other form of adverse action. So what we tell you is, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later, keep that buddy file system, and we'll get into that later on in the presentation. So here's the story of the month. We were out on site doing that full-blown mock inspection for an FFL, and came in early, did a little, show and tell, just kind of gave the staff a heads up what we were going to be doing. And we just sit down to start our inspection, and lo and behold, one of the employees comes back and tells us, heads up, ATF is here. And JB and I looked at each other like, you've got to be kidding. And I was praying to God from that point that it was just somebody out of criminal enforcement looking for a 4473. Unfortunately, it was an industry operations investigator that was there to do an inspection. JB, the heat was on.
Yeah, I don't think this ever happened. It had happened in a different way to me once, JC. I don't think you had it recently too, once.
Yeah, I've had it a couple times.
For a different reason. So this is probably the point of panic. So thankfully, the FFL was prepping for our visit, and they did their inventory last week, the week prior to our visit. And thankfully, we're only missing one firearm that we thought we'd show up, we'll help research it, figure out where that firearm is. Hopefully it wasn't stolen. Long story short, it wasn't, but that was a critical issue. Now realizing the ATF was there, and looking at the paperwork, as you can see in a stack in this picture here, the attachments were just the most I've ever seen. If you could attach a form to a 4473 for whatever reason, they had it. And it wasn't one staple, it was two. So we worked literally through the night till about 3 a.m. Not only did we work, but the entire store staff spent 3 or 4 nights with us, just staying ahead of the ATF inspection process to make sure everything worked out well in the end, including trying to find a missing firearm. So lo and behold, 5 days later, most folks would think we were adversarial with the ATF in the same building with us. But by the end of the week, we're actually supporting each other, providing real answers fast. The organization of this by the staff and by us just allowed the ATF to fly through their process, literally fly. They were appreciative of everything we had presented, the way we presented, and the answers that the store team had. And it went pretty smooth, but it was probably the most stressful week we've had in the many years of doing this. Anything else, JC?
No, it was definitely stressful. And that first 18 hours was definitely supported and helped that FFL make sure that everything was going good. So bravo to us and the team at that FFL. We can't mention their name, but I got to tell you, we pulled one out.
Yeah, the funniest part about this whole thing is with all the visits we have scheduled, into the next few months, this FFL is very nervous because it's been about 5 or 6 years since his last inspection. His NFA, he's a big name in town, etc. He says, guys, I'm just not feeling good with all this Biden stuff. So we shift, and JC and I never travel together. We going up, we basically get on a plane on Monday and go in opposite directions. But the stars were aligned is what we concluded by the end of the week. And again, thankfully, it all worked out.
So we got a winner this week, Tuesday morning, and this one actually brought chills to my spine. We got notified by ATF counsel at one of the field divisions that one of the FFLs that we were supporting through the revocation process, we actually won, and the FFL is not going to be revoked. I believe we're up into the double digits on wins right now. We're still waiting on quite a number of responses from the ATF, but once again, our argument and the information and support that we provided made the DIO for this field division feel comfortable enough not to revoke. In addition to that, we've got, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of 23 or 24 FFLs that we've been supporting through their inspection process. They're winning too because ATF went through all their paperwork, completed the inspections with 0 cited violations. So I think I think 24 was last week. Number 24 was last week, right, JB?
Yeah. Since January 24, 0 inspections. And we feel a lot of it has to do with taking the guide we have out on the website, reading through it, making sure your team uses the checklist. Everyone on staff has to clearly understand the challenges, the risks, and what happens if you don't do it right. So that's our strategy, is not to fight these anymore, as we keep saying, or debate them with the ATF as to why something happened and what you're going to do to make it better. That was BB, before Biden. Now the new approach is get it right the first time. So,
That's right. So, all right, inspection time strategies for success. JB touched on it. We'll get on the prep in a minute, but like these are the things that we're seeing on a regular basis that are causing revocations. So you need to be really aware and promote this to your staff if you have staff, and hold them to account and make sure that they know that they have this ability to stop a transaction if there's something wrong. Number one, self-identified as prohibited. If an individual self-identifies on the 4473 as prohibited, do not proceed with a background check. This is a citable violation and revocable. You've conducted a background check on somebody that already identified as being prohibited. So keep that in mind. Do not proceed with that background check. Notate the firearm can be transferred. Now, obviously on premature transfer dates, that's a big one for revocations. That Brady date, that delay date, make sure it's notated in box 27C. We've seen this one a lot during our mock inspections where people aren't notating that information, and your staff should know that you need to fall back on that to make sure you can transfer the firearm. We have gotten way too many FFLs that have gotten a notice of revocation for transferring that firearm prematurely. So wake up, make sure that that is documented and people are following that. And then lastly, say the Brady date passes or whatever the case may be, or they get a proceed and the customer left the building, forgot their wallet or is coming back, had an appointment, whatever. Make sure you're not transferring firearms over 30 days. And our recommendation is block 32. That's that magic box. Notate it there. Background check expires on this date. It's actually going to be on that NICS detail summary. And for those of you in a point of contact state, depending on your state, they may document it as well. Just make sure you know exactly when that NICS or point of contact state background check expires, and make sure you're notating it so everyone is aware. Do not transfer this firearm beyond this date. Those are two really simple things you can do to save you from revocation. All right. Again, no out-of-state resident CCW LTC. There is no reciprocity as it relates to firearm transfers. Don't do it. It doesn't qualify. Okay. No expired IDs, but you can still fall back on alternatives. And one alternative is okay to use as long as it has all the required attributes is a CCW or LTC, depending on your state. I know that states vary as far as the information that's provided on that concealed carry permit. It has to have that expiration date, a date of birth, the residence, and it has to be a current residence as well as a photo. As long as it has all of the attributes of a driver's license or a state issued ID, you can use that alternative, okay? And you can document it the same way you do any other identification document. But keep in mind, no expired IDs. We've gotten a ton of phone calls over the last month asking us about whether or not you can accept an expired ID. What part of expired don't you understand, okay? Once it's expired, it's invalid. No attachments that aren't required. Utilize that parallel or buddy file system. There's only a few different instances where attachments to the 4473 are required. And, orders, military orders, Glock, LE, military purchase documents. There's so many different things that we see attached to a 4473 that don't have any business being there. If you're including of these attachments, keep in mind, they're susceptible to review by the ATF, and they're going to compare that information to what's on the 4473, and you will be cited for any violations. And if they're egregious, if they fall into those 5 deadly sins or what we call the 7 deadly sins, keep in mind, you will get a notice of revocation. We're going to talk about NICS control numbers, NICS NTN, NICS transaction numbers in a second, but keep track of NICS point of contact state NTN control numbers, okay? These are vitally important. and can really save your butts as far as an inspection is concerned for proving information. But again, don't attach this stuff to the 4473. Keep it in that parallel file system. Well, one of our clients actually calls it the buddy file. It could be used to protect yourself in the future, but it's your business record and not a matter of record with the firearm transaction record. Okay. So getting into that NICS transaction record and keeping that NICS search history query, we want you to do this on a daily basis. This is the NICS search history query. It's really, really simple to generate. You simply go into eNICS, you go down to search history query on the left-hand side on that left menu. There'll be two options that pop up immediately. You can leave it, but I always delete the NTN search and keep the create date search. Okay. And what you want to do is you want to put in create date equal to, and it's the end of that business day, because keep in mind, stuff falls off there after 24 hours. So at the end of today, if you're a NICS company, if you're a NICS user, go in, close a business, go ahead and do that search history query for today, 9/19. All right. And what that's going to give you is actual report that you can download into PDF that'll show you every NICS transaction that you ran for the day. It'll show you exactly who you ran it for. It'll show you who actually submitted it or entered it. And you should be making sure that every one of your employees is assigned a user ID for the NICS transaction system. So that way you can keep track of who's doing what background checks. It'll tell you what the status was, whether it was not retrieved, proceed, denied, whatever the case may be, what the expiration date is, what the Brady date is, and what date you created that on. Let me tell you something. We have had a number of FFLs where having this report in their buddy file system has saved them during an inspection. Okay. Do it daily. A tremendous tool for you to keep track of all the NICS transactions that you run, to understand whether or not you're missing any 4473s, as well as the opportunity to fall back on something if and when something comes up during an inspection or an internal review and you just can't find the transaction number or whatever, or you're missing the transaction number. So keep that in mind. The NICS search history query. All right. Be inspection ready at 88 days. What does this mean? So when the ATF shows up at your FFL to conduct an inspection, they're going to come in with at least the last 60 days, if not 88 days of NICS transaction numbers that your FFL was assigned. So what you can actually do once a month, at the end of the month, you can actually run your NICS search history query and gather all of the NICS transaction numbers that you were assigned for the month. It's going to give you NTN numbers. It's going to give you the status, the expiration date, the Brady transfer date, and the create date, as well as your RDS key. All right. It's going to tell you everything you did in NICS for the month. It's also, after 24 hours, I talked about it a minute ago, it's going to drop off those names. So that's why it's vitally important for you to run this on a daily basis. This one you run on a monthly basis, and this will help you make sure that you have all the 4473s for that month. Okay. It'll also tell you if, say, you happen to have one 4473 missing a NICS transaction number, you can go back to this report and say, okay, on this date, I did 5 transactions. I'm accounting for these other 4. So this particular 4473 must have this NICS transaction number. All right. The other thing that this is vitally beneficial for is to verify all your denied transactions. All of your denied transactions are in this report for all eternity. So you can actually go back and run this report for years to verify that you're accounting for all your denied transactions as well. So keep that in mind. Now, for you point of contact states, you may not have access to a report like this, but I know here in Colorado, they actually give you a summary report, a detailed summary report with your billing. Keep that. Keep that. Keep it on record in that buddy filing system, so you always have those control numbers that were issued by the state. And if you don't know, or maybe you don't get a detailed report, contact that point of contact state provider and see if you can get some sort of detail either on a daily or monthly basis, whatever the case may be. They may be able to provide you with this information. Again, great information to keep as far as a business record in a parallel or buddy file. So that way you always have something to fall back on to prove that you did not transfer a firearm without doing a background check. ATF-LE Comlog. We want you guys, as part of your strategy going forward, to go out and get yourself a little, composition book or a multi-subject notebook, whatever, spiral notebook, to create what we call an ATF and law enforcement comlog. And in this comlog, we got a number of different strategies for this that I'll discuss. But in this comlog, go to the next slide, JB. In this comlog, we want you to go ahead and document down. Now, back in high school, you probably were told by either your English or some teacher, start a daily journal. That's what this is, a daily journal of activities, right? You want to keep any communications with ATF or local law enforcement. You want to keep track of trace requests, subpoenas, any phone calls, etc. you get. You want to log visits by ATF criminal enforcement for investigations or by local law enforcement for investigations. Notate the date, the time, who came in, what they were looking for, why they were looking for it, etc. You want to keep track of all this. You want to log any ATF or law enforcement contacting you for NICS denials. Remember, that's coming up in October. It's only a week away, maybe 2 weeks. So you want to make sure you're logging that as well. You want to track any questions you ask of the ATF or they ask of you, those IOIs, and what their responses were. And then obviously, if you're asking for something or an ATF IOI is providing a recommendation or stating something's a regulation, always get it in writing from them. And you keep that with your ATF and LE Communications Log. Now, here's the reason for this. What we're doing with all of these revocations that we're supporting is we're having these FFLs have to go back in their emails and remember things that happened in the past as far as their interactions with either the ATF or law enforcement, and utilizing that as to prove that they're not plainly indifferent, that they're there to support public safety. So we're having a scramble to go back in our memories to figure out, okay, when did you help the ATF? When did you help law enforcement with an investigation, etc.? You need to make sure you're keeping track of that, because remember, it could be something as simple as transferring a firearm before the Brady date or transferring a firearm after the expiration date. And zero tolerance means zero. So this stuff is really valuable when it comes to a revocation hearing or a warning conference, so we can present to the ATF and say, hey, listen, they're not plainly indifferent. They're willing to work with you. Here's all the things they've done over the year or last 5 years or whatever the case may be. Really, really good strategy to put in place and protect yourself.
Yeah, and this is also a great place to keep track of those straw purchase preventions. Most of you don't have that log in place that the ATF always asks about. Just write it in here. Any day you got a straw purchase prevention or suspected straw purchase prevention, just write it down. Put a one-liner in there about the name of the person and maybe the address or the type of firearm. So another great use for this new log you can put in place.
Yeah. There he is, Corn Pop. Get it right the first time. GIRFT. You heard it here first last month. Get it right the first time. All right, here's the rundown. If you need to be inspection ready, here's what you need to do. First of all, previous inspections, you need to make sure that you have no repeat violations. Get your report of violations and make sure none of those items that were cited previously are being cited. It could be cited again. Okay. So previous inspection, no repeat violations. Any previous adverse action, that's your warning letter, warning conference, no violations. You can have no violations. You need to be 100% clean. So keep that in mind. If you've gone through a warning letter or warning conference and they come back in for a reinspection, you are susceptible to reinspection at 12 months. So you can have no violations. Review every ATF form 4473 before the transfer. Get it right before the gun walks out the door. That's imperative. If your staff is just giving it a glance, thinking they're helping their buddy out or they trust their buddy, they are not helping anybody by doing that. Make sure that they are diligent about going over that 4473 before that firearm gets transferred. Conduct those inventories. We recommend quarterly. You can break it up. 1 month do handguns, 1 month do rifles, 1 month do shotguns. That makes it a little less mundane, monotonous. But try to get them done quarterly. If you're a smaller shop, maybe you don't need to do them that frequently. Another strategy you can use is do gun counts on a daily basis, just to make sure you're counting for everything. Complete those A&D entries on a daily basis. By end of business, you need to make sure everything is logged in or logged out. Don't wait. If you wait, you're going to forget. We find it over and over again with FFLs around the country. When they wait, they forget and something doesn't get logged in. All right. Prevent those straw purchases. Make sure your employees know and are authorized to make that decision. You, even if it's a gut feeling, are not required to do a transfer if you don't feel right about it. And evaluate that interest and intent. Make sure it's genuine. You know what the atypical customer looks like when they walk in the door and they're buying a firearm. Always measure every customer against what you know, right? And if something doesn't feel right, don't move forward with it. This is a big one, those 3310.4s and 3310.12s, those multi-sales. If the 12 applies to you in those border states, make sure you are getting them done daily. End of business day by regulation, not the next morning, not at the end of the week, not at the end of the month, that business day. So you need to keep proof that they were submitted. We recommend to everybody submit them electronically, submit them via email, and try to get your local law enforcement's email address as well. That way you can do both on the same email, copy yourself on that and retain those, and look for receipt. You're going to get a response from the ATF that it was received. Look for that and keep it. We were in FFL last week doing an inspection. Lo and behold, ATF came in, said they were missing 13 submissions of 3310.4s. 13. Well, luckily, the employee had evidence in their email and could print off all of the ones that were missing and show that they submitted them. So you got to keep that proof showing that you submitted them on the day they were supposed to be submitted. And then obviously respond to those ATF traces within 24 hours. The vast majority of the time, they're going to want you to respond right there and then when they call you. But you have 24 hours to find that paperwork and submit it. All right. And nothing else. If you need support, reach out to us, call us, text us, email us, whatever the case may be. Go out to FFLconsultants.com, just like you did to register for this event. Grab that inspection preparedness guide, get it today, and start implementing these strategies immediately to save yourself a lot of grief as it relates to the revocation or even the adverse action process. Warning conferences and warning letters are no different. Just as much pressure and focus needs to be put on those. All right, JB, coming to a city near you.
Yeah, guys, we've got, we've been at a lot of events over the summer and more recently, even August, September. So we are booked in these cities. We are coming to a city near you. If you think you would want to squeeze in a visit while we're in town, get in touch with us. These are not all the cities. These are the primary cities. We're booking into December, late December, early January already. So, if you're on that list, you think you're susceptible, you think you need some help, please go ahead and reach out to us and find out how we can make that happen for you. And here's our NSSF little promo. If you know who the NSSF is, you've been to SHOT Show, the National Shooting Sports Foundation is your trade association for the firearms industry since 1961. Those guys know what they're doing, and we're part of their compliance team. So if you want to hear more about their membership, great deals, great mock audit inspection visits, you can take advantage of. If you're a member and you don't understand your benefits, give us a call. Please don't sign up online directly. You'll be assigned to another consultant and we will not be able to help you. So if you have any interest in the NSSF benefit and programs, please reach out to us or drop us an email.
They definitely have some unbelievable deals for you. So reach out to us for sure.
Yeah.
So, all right.
JC, so I want to give everybody a heads up. We've got the next 35 minutes. Then we got to take off. We got airplanes to catch, seriously. And let's go ahead and run through these. JC, I'll run them off for you. Rapid fire.
Let's go.
And if anybody has questions you want added at the end, please type those into the chat room now. All right, JC, here's the first question. I logged in an item late that was manufactured, Form 2 was submitted, but the item was logged in about 9 days after. Should I notify my local ATF agent of the violation?
No, number one. Don't notify anybody of the violation. Depending on if you're electronic or if you're paper, this is what I would tell you to do. If you're electronic, go ahead. Most of the electronic systems will allow you to go back in time and enter that. It's going to pop up. Chances are it'll pop up. Hey, look, you're trying to enter this at a date, older date or whatever the case may be. But they all provided notes. Okay. So what you want to do is go ahead and enter it on the day that you actually manufactured it. And in that notes, just say, inadvertently did not submit this or add this to my acquisition record, made correction this date, blah, blah, blah. Just something simple like that. And the same holds true for paper. If you're using paper, just make a memo for record calling out what you did wrong and that you identified it yourself. This really isn't one that I would, offer up for self-disclosure, and your local ATF IOI isn't the person to do self-disclosure to anyway. So in those couple of instances, that's what I would tell you. Now, if it's something other than that, reach out to us, let us know, and we'll help you work through it. But generally speaking, I think this is something that you can correct on your own without having to go ahead and self-disclose.
Yeah, and the self-disclosure was normal practice before the Biden administration implemented zero tolerance, but we've seen a lot of adverse action coming out of self-disclosure. So that's why we caution against it, but it is your choice. If you feel more comfortable doing so, feel free to do so. All right. Ready, JC, if you get a revocation notice, do they give you time to sell all your machine guns, or no law letter? I know they give you time to sell your inventory.
Now, first and foremost, if you get a notice of revocation, that doesn't mean you're being revoked. What it means is that the ATF wants to sit down with you and go through a formal hearing, and you need to provide them an argument as to why they should not revoke you. Now, obviously, there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of a basic overview of it. So just because you got a notice of revocation, depending on the situation, may not mean that you're going to get revoked, and we can probably provide you with a very good defense going through that revocation hearing. Now, to answer your question, yes, absolutely, they give you time to liquidate your assets, and that's a settlement agreement, and we do those as well. Depending on the situation, absolutely. If all of those are legally obtained firearms, whether NFA or GCA, there is a way to go ahead and liquidate those assets or transfer them to another FFL or sell them to another FFL. So reach out to us. Let us know what's going on as far as that revocation. We can pretty quickly evaluate where the ATF is going with it. Don't go it alone. And make sure that if you do get a notice of revocation, to remember you have 15 days to respond to the ATF and request a hearing. And if you get that notice of revocation, call us immediately so we can help you with that process.
If a receiver has a caliber marking on it because it was taken from a rifle, do I enter caliber as multi or as caliber markings on the receiver?
Whatever that if it's a fully completed firearm, whatever that firearm is completed as. So say you have, a receiver that says multi on it, but, it was assembled as a rifle. The customer, got all the parts, pieces, components, put it all together. And then for whatever reason, you have it for gunsmithing or pawn, and they made it into a 223 rifle or a 5.56. You record it as whatever it actually is as it is chambered. Okay. And a lot of times, especially with AR platform rifles, you'll find that caliber marked on the barrel.
Okay. Well, Glock made in Austria and imported by Glock. Do I enter Glock manufacturer and Glock importer into the A&D?
What I will tell you is yes. Now, a lot of ATF IOIs will accept the fact that Glock is known. It's known that Glocks are made in Austria or whatnot. But to protect yourself, absolutely get in the practice of marking both in your A&D record just to be on the safe side. There's nothing wrong with it. So go ahead and mark Glock Inc. Glock Inc. in your A&D record for manufacturer and importer in those instances where, the Glock is an Austrian made. Same holds true for Springfield International and all their tactical firearms. That's their Black Duns, the XDs, the Hellcats, things like that. You're going to put HS product with a K / Springfield International.
And I sat in on a warning conference remotely for one of our clients last week, and they were cited 38 times because they did not list the manufacturer, the foreign manufacturer, and the excuse was, and I'll call it an excuse, because the gun said made in Turkey. And I know a lot of you have that and you're not clear on who the manufacturer is, but you can clearly see made in Turkey. And the client unfortunately never contacted us and they left it blank. They had the importer, Century Arms International or whoever, and it was cited 38 times, and we're not sure how that's going to wind up. So why not write? So I asked, is made in Turkey or just Turkey appropriate? And the answer is yes. For a foreign manufacturer, you cannot otherwise identify. And again, remember, guys, when you say it today, but it is all the record keeping, everything you do today in your business is all about the trace. So the more detail information you have in your records, the better you'll be heading through an inspection and resulting in a trace someday. All right, if the stabilizing brace, JC, is removed from the pistol, would it still fall into the category of pistols proposed to register as NFA?
Well, that remains to be seen, but removing a stabilizing brace from a pistol, depending on how the ruling comes down and what changes they make, will depend on whether or not it's going to have to be registered as NFA. But what I would tell you is removing a stabilizing brace from it, the stabilizing brace doesn't make it the pistol. Okay, that's just a feature or an accessory that people put on it. Keep in mind, there's plenty of AR pistols out there that just have a buffer tube with no brace. So as it stands right now, it remains a pistol. We'll see what they come out with a ruling as to whether or not a buffer tube, just the buffer tube with no stock, no stabilizing brace, will qualify as an NFA firearm.
Yeah. Well, JC, talk about all those pictures we're getting the last couple of weeks that you and I have been throwing back and forth on from pawnbrokers.
Yeah. So, a lot of the attributes, look, when they first came down with this ruling, they came out with that, kind of rating system, if you will, on the stabilizing brace and what makes it a stabilizing brace and what makes it a shoulder stock, etc. The features of it are, the Velcro, whether or not the Velcro is attached on, say, a blade, or if the stabilizing brace fits around the forearm properly, etc. So a lot of wonky, but we actually got a lot of FFLs sending us pictures of SBRs. They sent us picture. One of them was AR pistol that had a vertical grip. It still had a stabilizing brace, but it had a vertical grip on it. Well, that qualifies as an SBR. So we just got a ton of pictures in the last couple of weeks where, especially pawnbrokers or FFLs that take in trades, they're sending us a picture and we're like, that's an SBR. That is not an AR pistol. So you really, really got to be careful and look at all the features and characteristics of the firearms you're taking in as either a pawnbroker or somebody that buys used weapons, used firearms, and really evaluate those. We have a ton of FFLs that reach out to us and send us pictures and say, hey, am I all right with this one? That's perfectly fine. We'll give you a thumbs up, thumbs down on it right away. But man, just be careful, because you could very well end up with something in your inventory that you're either A, not qualified to have, or B, you didn't go through the right process to acquire that firearm.
Next question. Can the firearm manufacturer and importer be determined by the serial number?
Good luck. Yes, in certain cases, but there's really no good records out there of that. You can certainly try to go out to the manufacturer's website and see if they have that capability of searching it by serial number. Atypically, serial numbers are a classification of the firearm by that manufacturer, and you can certainly reach out to the manufacturer and say, hey, I have this firearm serial number. Can you give me more information? You can also contact the distributor or wholesaler sent it to you and see how they have it logged. So yes and no. It's tough. It would probably require a phone call to the actual manufacturer.
Yeah, and all this new marking, ruling, 2021-05F, all of this is a lot of this is all about the trace capabilities of someday a firearm being found at a crime scene, and there's got to be some minimal information on there. So, yeah, to JC's point, good luck with just the serial number. That's why so much other information, the RDS key or the manufacturer information is all critically required in your books. So,
yeah.
Here's a new one, similar to JC, and I'm really proud of everyone on this call for these questions because it means you've really taken interest in this new marking and/or SBR rulings that are coming down, and you're getting ahead of it versus getting caught up in problems later. So here's a good one, John. As an 07, 02, am I able to take my current in stock pistol braced firearms, AR pistols, and file them Form 2 to make them SBRs instead of taking the amnesty?
Well, look, hey, if you want to make them into SBRs, first of all, depending on the pistol brace, it may not, if you have a true, like the first version of the SB Tactical arm brace, I don't know that you're going to be wanting to find, or a blade installed on a AR pistol. I don't know that you're going to want to be sticking that one up to your shoulder. But the fact of the matter is you can certainly do that. I don't know why you would do that before December. And then again, if you're going to file them as SBRs, why not, remove that stock or remove that arm brace and go ahead and put a full-fledged stock on there, a collapsible stock to make it into an SBR, and then file that form 2 notifying the ATF. I wouldn't do it before. If you're going to keep them with the pistol braces on it, let's see what happens with this ruling and where it goes. We don't even know if it's going to be pushed down or not. So that's, it's all rumor. It remains to be seen. Right now we're here in December, but it's been pushed off so many times because the ATF's trying to get their head wrapped around it. So I wouldn't recommend doing anything just yet, but if you are going to do it and you're going to convert it into an SBR, then why not just make it an SBR?
Great questions, guys. Keep them coming on this topic. Again, we don't know anything about this because it's been out there since 2018, so still hasn't happened. So here you go, another one, JC. If the pistol braced firearms are considered SBR, what will happen to the people of Illinois and other states that are not allowed to have SBRs?
Well, that's really simple. You're not allowed to have them. So you're going to have to either convert them back into, GCA firearms or whatever's allowed in your state. And make sure that that configuration meets state requirements. So, if you're not allowed to have SBRs in the state of Illinois, and that AR pistol that you have in your possession today meets the qualifications of an SBR, then you're going to have to change that configuration. And keep in mind, amnesty, right? We talk about amnesty. For years now, these rulings have been coming down, and we haven't seen one in forever, but there is a grace period. So you're going to have about 60 days to respond to this and do what's necessary. So whether it's registering it or reconfiguring it so it meets the regulation for a GCA firearm, you're going to have time to do that. So don't jump the gun. This thing isn't coming down until December. We'll know a lot more as time goes on, and we'll get this thing figured out and make sure we get information out to you.
And last week, you just said it, JC, but the next question is talking to this as well. Previously, it was discussed that all warning, but on the SBR last week, somebody said, if I have an SBR in an illegal state, what do I do if I want to keep it? So you just said to reconfigure it, right?
Yep.
And what do you do with NFA record tracing?
What do you do with NFA record tracing?
Do you remove it from the NFRTR?
Oh, well, yeah, if it's an AR pistol today, it's not on the NFRTR, but if it transitions to where that firearm is going to be an NFA firearm and you reconfigure it during that grace period and you're meeting the requirements to ensure that it remains a GCA firearm, there's nothing you have to do. It remains an AR pistol. It remains an AR pistol. And in your A&D records and on 4473s, it remains a pistol. So don't sweat that. Nothing with the NFRTR unless you're going to move to a situation where you're going to make it an NFA firearm.
Yeah. All right. Next, previously it was discussed that all warning letters were resulting in revocation letters. Can you clarify?
Okay. So just to clarify, previous adverse action, and that was warning letters and warning conferences. If in the report of violations that you received as an FFL at post inspection, if that had one of the 5 deadly sins notated, those ROVs, those report of violations were submitted into Spartan, and Spartan was handing down revocations in certain situations. Now, that's not all warning letters. That's not all warning conferences. Keep that in mind. Okay. But we've been told by leadership at ATF, pretty much all of those have been resolved. So as far as we know, anybody that received a warning letter or warning conference around the time of June 21, all of those, any of those that transitioned or where they rescinded the warning letter or warning conference and they transitioned into a notice of revocation, those should all be done now. So if you have a warning letter from the past or a warning conference from the past and you haven't received a notice of revocation, you should be able to breathe easy now.
Yeah, we're going to rapid fire guys through the rest of these, but stay tuned. If I have a few kits that I bought for my personal collection before I became an FFL, can I still keep them as I have no intention of selling them?
Yes, absolutely. Just make sure whether you're a licensee or a non-licensee, or you have firearms in your possession in your personal collection, you just need to make sure that you're following the rules.
Okay. If I put together an AR-15 receiver and upper before 8/24, do I still have to serial number the upper? Same goes for existing manufacturer AR sold or bought. Very confusing.
Where is this?
So there is no requirement to serialize an upper.
Yeah. Unless that upper physically and is constituted as a receiver, like some of the Brownings and such. So unless it has all the attributes of what the ATF identifies as a receiver, it has the fire control unit and all that, it doesn't have to be marked.
Yeah, and Dave, if you're still confused, just give JC a ring on that one this season. Okay, I don't deal with PMFs. Do I still have to update my FFL book headings?
Yes, absolutely. Doesn't matter. That's a required heading attribute.
Right. Next, as a home-based FFL, how far can the ATF go in my home or my personal collection during an inspection? My personal collection is kept completely separate in different safes. Are they required to have tags on them in the safe? Can I be forced to open my personal safes during the inspection?
Look, just mark your safe on the outside, get a label maker, or just put a sign on it. Create a sign in Word and just say all firearms contained within this safe are personally owned or a part of a personal collection owned by you. If you go through an inspection, you're a home-based FFL, and the ATF comes in for an inspection, and they're going to sit down at your table. They're going to go through your 4473s, make sure everything's accounted for, etc. And then they're going to go through your A&D record. And as long as you can account for all of the firearms in the A&D record in that safe that contains only the firearms inventory for the business, there should be no reason for the ATF to go into your personal collection safe. But if the two safes are located right next to each other and you're missing a firearm and all of a sudden you go to your personal safe to grab that firearm or cover that firearm and prove to them or show it to them, they're going to have a head scratcher on their hands and they're going to say, okay, well, now we need to go through and prove that all those firearms are part of your personal collection. So don't commingle, because that'll be the first sign to them and send that message to that IOI to say, I need to go through their personal collection to make sure nothing else is in there that should be accounted for.
Yeah. And we had the same issue in a visit a couple of weeks ago where it was an NFA dealer and he had his really cool SBRs and different things on display, and they weren't segregated or marked properly. And the ATF did go through every firearm in that building, including his personal closet and his personal safe. So separation and segregation and labeling is important.
Yep.
I was told that the ATF that I'm not dealing in PMFs, that I do not have to add the PMF wording.
Sorry, but your IOI is wrong.
Yeah, ask for it in writing.
Ask for it in writing.
Yep, get that email from their official ATF or .gov email address.
By regulation, you are required to include that in the heading.
Hey, quick funny story, JC. Without telling names or anything, what did you explain? What was it you had to explain to the ATF a couple weeks ago on that? Was it a military purchase?
Oh, it was military purchase. Yeah, we were on site at an inspection. I was anyway. And the ATF was basically just kind of doing not a closing, but a close for the day. I just popped in and said, hey, just checking in, making sure anything wonky, anything of concern. And they said, oh yeah, hey, listen. And they set a bunch aside and they said, just so you know, you don't have to put both addresses anymore for military transfers, for firearm transactions involving military members. I was like, yeah, you do. They're saying, oh no, that went away. I said, no, it didn't. They weren't argumentative, but they were definitely like, JC, hey, we're the ATF, we know. I said, well, since you know, you should also know that in the instructions, it still says they have to give both addresses. So they looked through and read it, and both IOIs looked at each other like, holy crap, he's right. You do still have to put both addresses. I was like, yeah, it's been that way for a while now. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe something will change in the next version, but as it stands now, you have to write both addresses. So IOIs, 99.9% of them are very knowledgeable. There are times where they bring stuff up and we call it the code of IOI regulations. Nobody knows where it came from, how it came to be, or where they heard it from, or how it, how they understand it. Just be careful. Always get it in writing.
Yep. Next, if someone builds a gun and they stamp their own serial number on it, is that a PMF?
Sure. If somebody, a non-licensee, builds a firearm, they can certainly stamp their own serial number on it. But if it comes into your possession as an FFL for longer than basically for 24 hours or overnight, you are required to stamp that firearm with your FFL number, your RDS key. That's the first 3 and last 5, as well as your city and state, in addition to that serial number, and record both in your A&D record. Yep. This is why I tell you to stay away from PMS.
Yep. Next, a coworker follows a number of forums and YouTube attorneys, some of which are coming up with the notion that the amnesty for braces is nothing more than a setup, admitting you are in possession of an illegal SBR. Is there any merit in any of these ideas, or is this just likely someone trying to cause panic?
Well, there's some merit because we're reading it right in their budget request. So they've got a pretty distinct statement in there, but we don't know what it means yet. So I would just stand by on anything dealing with 2021 R-08, the pistol brace ruling, until we know more. Yes, there's some information out there, but there's not enough detail around it because it was actually done in a statement for submittal for more budget dollars. So just stand by. Nobody panic about the whole thing. We'll find out exactly what's going on with the arm brace ruling as soon as we get more information.
Next, should we go back and edit the status of the delayed background checks that have been canceled, or is there a grandfather date?
Should we go back and edit the status of the
box 27 C and D?
Well, obviously, if you did get a delay and you didn't document the date, or you didn't update 27D, those need to be corrected. You're required to mark the appropriate boxes. But again, that is going to be specific to any NICS or point of contact state responses, not what you did with the transaction. There is no grandfather date for that. You were supposed to be marking that the entire time. So no, there's no grandfather date. Those have to be corrected per regulations. And I would tell you, we probably need to walk through what we're looking at and determine, where you need to make photocopies and attach photocopies, etc., for corrections.
All right. Next. A few months ago, we received Desertec MDR-X chassis / receivers, and the barrel conversion kits or uppers was shipped separately. We confirmed at the time that those were disposed as receivers. On a previous webinar, I understood that if we sell the upper and lowers together, but not assembled, that it would be considered a rifle. However, after today's discussion, that doesn't seem to be the case. Can you please clarify?
Yeah, if you're selling the two together or with parts kits, it's no different than that's, a billet or, 80%. If you're selling all the pieces, parts, and components together in the same transaction, that could be constituted as manufacturing. So you need to be very, very careful. If you received it as a receiver, then that's fine. Sell it as a receiver. But if you're starting to sell all the parts, pieces, and components together to build a firearm or make it readily able to be converted into a full-fledged firearm, you need to be really careful because you could be getting into the manufacturing realm.
Yeah, and the same FFL's asking, but this was different between August. It was different before August
Yes.
24th.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
the law has changed. Yeah.
Yep.
A parts kit is now considered a complete firearm.
Yeah.
As long as it has the receiver in it. Right.
Yeah. Basically, what we call it is facilitating. You're facilitating the assembly, and assembling is manufacturing. So
Yeah. The same FFL. Should we keep the MRDX as a receiver in our books, even if the upper and lower are always sold together but not assembled?
yeah, again, you can't sell all the pieces, parts, and components together.
Yeah.
So you need to be really careful of that.
You need to be separating those purchased components, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So the receiver stays as a receiver, but it's no longer sold with the accompanying parts.
Right.
Okay, next, if we help the customer assemble the upper and lower after they take possession of it via a 4473 has been signed, dated, proceeded, is that considered manufacturing?
Yes.
In the old days?
Well, even in the old days, it's kind of weird. It's like if you Cerakote before you sell the firearm or resell the firearm, that's considered manufacturing. But if the customer buys it and then you offer Cerakoting as a service, then it's gunsmithing. But assembling a firearm, no matter what, turning a firearm into a full-blown rifle, whatever the case may be, that's still manufacturing, even pre-824, pre-ruling. What I would tell you is if the customer takes it home, pushes the pins together and brings it back in, and you bring it into your books as a rifle, and then, do whatever tweaks, like put in a new bolt carrier group or whatever the case may be. If you're replacing part for part, then you're not manufacturing, that's gunsmithing. But if you're assembling that firearm, even pinning it together, that's considered manufacturing.
And I'll just throw in, prior to 824, I think the IOIs took a different approach to what's gunsmithing versus manufacturing. But in today's world, and zero tolerance, I think it's all, I agree, JC, I think it's all manufacturing.
Yep.
If anybody tries it and figures it out, let us know. Take the risk. All right, next, we received notices from Cal DOJ on delays, denials, approvals after delay, and other CA notices. Is it required to attach the hard copy to the 4473?
I would have to check Cal DOJ regulations on that. So Marcia, please get back with us on that, and I will verify whether or not that's required to be attached in the state of California. You're in a whole new world. You're in a whole different world, rather, as far as regulations are concerned. So I'll confirm that on Cal DOJ regs.
Yeah. All right, moving fast here, JC. If a customer buys a serialized stripped lower receiver, assembles it into a complete firearm, and then brings it into my shop to resell, is it considered a PMF? And does it need an additional serial number, or is this just remaining the same with the
No. In that situation, if they have either a stripped or a completed lower receiver, it's still a receiver, and they assemble it on their own, put all the pieces, parts, and components together. But it's already serialized, it's got a manufacturer and all that. Just bring it in as a rifle. It's not considered a PMF in that situation. It has all the attributes that are required by the GCA, unless it's one of those situations where it was a PMF. In other words, nothing is marked, and they actually drilled out the cast and all that kind of stuff, the well, put in all the pinholes and all that kind of stuff. Then it's a PMF. Otherwise, no. That sounds to me like you have a strip lower, a receiver that they received and put the firearm together. That comes in as a rifle or whatever it is, pistol, etc., and just utilize the markings that exist.
Okay, next. When the customer has an expired ID, but has gone to the Secretary of State to renew the ID, the Secretary of State staples a paper renewal with a new expiration date. Can we accept that on the 4473?
Well, this one is a little bit of a strange one. We've had a lot of situations where that document that's stapled to it says not for identification purposes. So you just need to make sure that no language like that exists on that document. But otherwise, atypical, that's acceptable. But I know there's a few states out there that actually stamp across it, not for identification purposes. So just be mindful of that.
Yeah. Similarly, most motor vehicle departments on expired IDs may allow you to renew online and bring that in along with the expired driver's license. That would be acceptable. as long as it's not marked like JC said, right?
Right.
And in that case, you could also check the digital website for the DMV to verify as well if they don't have the updated updated renewal in their possession. Next, if a customer decides to buy a handgun while waiting on the background check for a shotgun, are you saying we do not need to require a second 4473 to be filled out and we can run a second check for the handgun from the same form and note the second NTN in box 27B?
Didn't you just have this one, JB, pop up?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. So the answer is if you're adding a firearm that is a different configuration to the pending 4473, or somebody was delayed and they come back 3 days later before they actually pick up their firearm and they add something, the answer that we're getting is you should, if you're adding a like configuration, so that if the handgun is pending approval or the 3-day wait, and they come back in and get another handgun, you can add that. If they change the configuration to a long gun or an other, you have to redo the NICS and then get a second NTN number on that. So you can just start a new 4473. A lot of times that's just easier, but you cannot add another configuration to a pending 4473.
Now, if you catch it quick enough and you can contact NICS or the point of contact state and cancel it, that's another option for you, but that's got to be like a blink of an eye that you cancel it.
And also, you can also call NICS with the NTN number and ask them if it's permissible. We're not going to get into all the do's and don'ts by state, but many times, I'm just putting it out there, a lot of times the background check is different based on handgun and long gun, based on state requirements and age and restrictions. But if you call the NTN, the NICS operator, and give them the NTN number, they may give you approval right over the phone to proceed. And we just say, go ahead and mark that in box 32, document who you spoke with and that they authorized adding a firearm. Okay. Yeah, we get that question a lot, especially pawnbrokers. All right, next. I don't know if I'm included in the 24. Oh, this is Larry. Hey, Larry, great job on your inspection. Sounds like you did great down in Arizona. Congratulations. I'm in California. We need the supplementary documents for the DOJ dealer, the DRO's record of sale with the sale packet. Will I be cited for the documents you mentioned, like military orders to verify residence if they are attached to the packet?
No, you're not going to get cited for adding documents to the packet. It's just going to create a scenario where they may use those documents to verify and validate the information, the other information involved in the transaction. So you're not going to be cited for including too much information, but keep in mind, you could be cited if that information is used against you.
Yeah, here's the deal. If you're attaching anything, they can look at it. So you must attach state required documentation and the few federal items you need to attach, but there should be very few. California is the crazy story here. So there's a lot you guys have to do.
Yeah.
All right, next, I have never received a verification from the ATF receiving my 3310s. I do have fax receipts showing the fax took place.
Perfect. If you're faxing them in, keep that fax transmittal. The only time you're going to get a receipt is if you email it.
Right. All right, next, are shotguns included in any multiple sales form 3310.12?
No.
Okay. Only qualifying firearms over 22 caliber and they have an attachable magazine and a semi-automatic.
Correct.
Huge supporter of the NSSF. Totally recommend them to everyone. Thank you, RJ. As a member of NSSF as a retailer range, what is the cost of a mock audit for a small home-based FFL?
Kim, reach out to us. We'll get you that information.
And it's the same price, unfortunately, for the small home FFL or the big guy. So it really is our time, our visit, our travel. So All right. What POS or A&D software do you recommend besides Axis? Thanks. All right. RJ, why don't you send us a note? We'll give you our list of preferred providers. Adam, if we are an NSSF member through our group NBS, are we not covered as well as going directly through you guys? Well, you're covered basically for our support. You're not covered for the legal defense fund or the mock audit visit. That is extra, but it is something we were talking about. Anybody in the MBS group again, you're covered to call us anytime. NSSF does cover our time on the phone with you.
Yeah. Adam, reach out to us. We got to dig into that question a little bit more because there's different levels of membership with the NSSF as well. And you as an NBS member get a smoking deal. So reach out to us and we'll clarify what you're asking there.
All right. Is there a time frame that 3310.4 have to be submitted to the sheriff office?
Close of business the same business day that the multi-sale occurred. Doesn't matter if it's the local law enforcement agency or the ATF, both close of business day the same day that the transaction occurred.
Okay, quick, got a call last week. The FFL has been sending their 3310.4s to the state police because the local sheriff said we don't want them. And the ATF cited them for not sending it to the local sheriff's office.
Yeah, well, we get this one a lot. You know what? I appreciate the fact that the local LE agency didn't want them. But the bottom line is you have to send them. So tell that, hey, look, I don't care what you do with them. I just have to send them to you. I'm required by federal law.
Yep.
So
at the end of the week, put them all in an envelope and mail them to them.
Yep.
Yep. All right. What if I buy a firearm and there is no importer? Well, then you don't have to list it.
Yeah. If there's no importer, it's made in the USA.
Yep.
Assuming it's made in the USA, if it says made in Turkey and something's not notated, stamped on the firearm, then just put made in Turkey.
Yeah. And how about the old war guns from the 30s, 40s, 50s? They're Russian, the Japanese, Chinese. Just put the country of origin. Just put Chinese.
Yeah.
That's all you know. And a serial number.
Yep.
Yep. All right. If there's a list of manufacturers and importers that is available for FFLs to download for reference, no.
No. Do your research, Google it. It's tough.
Yeah. We have, go to our website. At the bottom of our website is a guide to properly listing manufacturers and importers. And it gives you a lot of samples on how to do this right and examples. If you need more, let us know. Or if you got questions, give us a call.
JB, I'm calling it, buddy. We got to head to the airport.
All right, guys.
Listen.
If we didn't answer your question, guys, just send it an email to us, info@fflconsultants.com. We'll get to those over the next week or so.
Yep. Yeah, please email them to us. We're happy to respond to you. Sorry we couldn't get to them, but JB and I both have planes to catch this afternoon and head to the airport. So thanks once again for all of you in FFLC Nation for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we will be making this recording available to you hopefully end of the week, early next week. We'll send you a link to share with your team members, and we'll see you in about 30 days.
Take care, everybody.